Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Jim and Shaun.
Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. I'm Jim Galante. He is Shaun Gold. Shaun, all ready for another week?
Ready for another week, Jim, and it's crazy. We're at week 13 in college football now. We're getting, close to the end of the season here, which is exciting but sad at the same time.
It's exciting as we come to the end of the college football schedule. So we got these dynamic, great games coming up, like Sanford versus Texas A&M, Charlotte against Georgia, Eastern Illinois, that powerhouse, Eastern Illinois goes up against Alabama. Riveting games, Shaun, riveting games.
Riveting. And it's funny, at the time of recording, there aren't even spreads out for all of these games because they're just going to be monstrous spreads. The only one I'm seeing right now is Georgia 44.5 over Charlotte, but I don't think A&M or Alabama even has a number on this game yet.
They don't. I looked multiple locations. They do not. Charlotte, Georgia, that's the reasonable game. So they have a spread on it. And you said, what is it, 44.5? Shaun, I'm thinking that half point, man. That's going to be the difference in this one.
Knowing the odds makers, it probably will be at the end of the day.
It will be. Let me just ask you about that. The Southeast Conference, as we all know, they scheduled just 8 conference games versus the Big Ten, which schedules 9. And this is what happens. Late in the season, they have these games. And look, you can't throw stones when you live in the glass house. Some of the Big Ten, we saw it with Penn State playing Villanova, Florida International, Nevada. I think all 3 of those games were 40-some point spreads. I get it. I was critical of that also. But the Southeast Conference does it for an additional game. What that does essentially is it saves each one of their teams a loss, or half their teams a loss. Because if they were playing each other, it would be a conference loss for somebody.
Yeah, it's something I would definitely like to see go away. Like, we want competitive football every week of the season. And like you said, early on in the Big Ten, that wasn't the case for most teams. Now for the SEC, that's not the case for most teams. It's really good for the small schools because they do get a nice paycheck when you go play one of those teams. So it's good to build up their programs. But let's be honest, we want every week exciting competitive games. And if it means taking on another loss, so be it. If it means that, hey, we now have a 3-loss team get to the college football playoffs, so be it. If your 3 losses were to 3 top 10 teams, you probably still deserve to be there if you beat other strong opponents. So, I'm not a fan of these week 13 meaningless games that we get to after, 5 or 6 weeks of really exciting conference play.
And to their credit, the Southeast Conference is going to a 9-game schedule. You do bring up the point of the money for the small schools. I think the answer to it, Shaun, is instead of the traditional spring game where it's blue versus white at Penn State, hey, how about letting the big-time teams pay one of these schools to come in? If you're the big-time school, if you're concerned about injuries, which they all are, do not play your top 22, your 2 deep. Play your number 3s and number 4s, and you could actually charge admission, at least a small one, to cover the cost of bringing in those small schools to play. The fans would enjoy it more to see a team wearing a different colored jersey, no matter who it is. That's just my take on it. It would make spring football better, allow those schools to still make a few dollars, and eliminate some of these ridiculous games that we have, Shaun. That's my take. When they make me the king of college football, that's how we're going.
I like it.
All right. I'll let you know when I get the title of czar of college football. We do have some games. I'm just checking. Nothing. Oh, well, we do have one Southeast Conference game. We have several others to take a look at. Shaun, let's start with Nebraska at Penn State. Little surprised this is going to be a night game. Didn't expect that for this type of game. Nebraska, Penn State. Were you as surprised as me? Penn State, a 9.5-point favorite in this one.
Yeah, I definitely was. Now, Jim, I believe I'm right about this. No Dylan Raiola for Nebraska, right? Going into
Correct.
this game. I think that definitely plays a bit of a factor into it. But still, from what we've seen from Penn State, I wasn't expecting them to be a 10-point favorite against anybody in the Big Ten. They did have a good showing against Michigan State. I still think they could have played, perhaps a little bit better. They were down 7-0, and I think it was 10-3 at one point in that game. They could have started the game better than they did, but good finish for Penn State. I think in this matchup, at home, at night, definitely plays a factor into this, and I think that's baked into the spread there. So I like Penn State to pick up a little bit of momentum here and pick up a win. 9.5 points is a lot, Jim, but I could see it happening in the fourth quarter. So I don't love this play right here, but I'm going to go with Penn State. It seems like they are still together as a team, and I think that's the most important thing for the season. I think they want to end this thing on a high note, go into, the offseason on a win streak for whoever the new head coach is going to be, and try to build on some momentum from what looked like a lost season for a while.
And I do believe you're right that it's baked in, that it's a it's a night game. It'll be a pseudo, if not official, whiteout. It's also senior night because it's the last home game. A lot of emotion. And I think Penn State got over the hump in this game. They played all season like a team that didn't really care until candidly the Indiana loss. They played well in a loss, and I believe we talked about this game last week being okay. What takes? Is it that they played well enough against Indiana to beat most teams, or is it, you know what, that was our last hurrah, our last chance? Well, to the credit of this team, they came back and played very hard in this game. They played well. And I think, as you said, that's baked into the spread. I'm going to succumb to it. I'm going to buy into it. That, Ethan Grunkmeyer is beginning to look more comfortable quarterbacking. I think they're calling plays for him. They're doing better at that also. I'm going to go with the Nittany Lions in a whiteout type atmosphere. All right, let's hit the one Southeast Conference game on our schedule, and that's Missouri at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's still working on making it to the playoffs, Shaun. Big win last week against Alabama. They are a 7.5-point favorite at home against Missouri.
Well, Jim, we've got a big question mark. Beau Pribula, is he going to play? Is he not? He's listed as questionable right now as we're speaking. If he plays, I'm going to go with Missouri to cover this spread. This is, going to be a hard-fought game, and we just saw Oklahoma take down Alabama, keep their season alive. This Missouri team, while they already have 3 losses, they're still a very dangerous team, and they're now playing to try to ruin somebody else's season. I think we've seen so much chaos in college football, and I do not think that ends this week. So I could totally see, if Beau Pribula is playing in this game, Missouri going get a shocking upset victory and seeing another top 10 opponent fall this season in college football. If Pribula is out, though, I do like Oklahoma at home to cover the spread, but I still think 7.5 is a lot of points in a very competitive conference football game. So assuming we're healthy, give me Missouri in this one.
I didn't keep up to date on whether Beau Pribula would be playing in this game. I didn't think he would be, but either way, I think Oklahoma, with the playoffs within reach, big win against Alabama, that was huge for them. I think they smell it. I think they sense it. Got the good defense, the veteran quarterback. I like that combination. I'm going with Oklahoma in this one. All right, next up, Shaun. Big Ten. This is the biggest game in the Big Ten this week. It's USC at Oregon. Believe it or not, Shaun, this has major playoff implications. If USC pulls off the upset here, they're in a real good position as a 2-loss team with a very big win against an Oregon team on the road. Reflecting that, though, Oregon, a 10.5-point favorite. That one surprised me a little bit also.
I think the reason the spread's that big is, one, obviously it's, it's on the road for USC. Travel's not too big of a factor here. We're just, moving up a little bit. I think the reason, though, the spread's that big is because both offenses are great, but Oregon's defense is clearly the better unit out of the two defenses. USC's defense hasn't been awful. but it's not what Oregon is. Third in total yards in the country is what these Oregon Ducks are. And at home, it's going to be a very tough environment. With that being said, though, I do like what I've seen out of USC. I've questioned them many times throughout this season, and they continuously will respond. I think this game could be kind of like the Notre Dame game. I'm not expecting the Trojans to go in and get a win, but I do think they'll be able to stay competitive. And I don't believe they did cover against Notre Dame, but I do believe they can cover against Oregon here. Their season is on the line. This is a huge game for Lincoln Riley. It's not his best USC team. I think his first year in LA with Caleb Williams was his best team, but this team has the potential to have the best ending of any of his teams. And they've got the number one recruiting class in the nation coming in next year. There's a lot of hype around USC. I think this is a chance where they can show, hey, it's not just about next year. It's about right now for our squad. So give me the Trojans to, put Oregon on upset alert. I don't think they'll actually get the win, but I do think 10.5 is still a lot of points in what should be a very competitive football game. So I like them to cover this one, Jim.
You talked about this from the USC perspective, that they're probably better than a lot of people think they are. I'm actually going to give this from the Oregon perspective. I'm not sure they're as good as a lot of people think they are. And I think that adds to everything you talked about with the Trojans. I'm also going with USC. That 10.5 points, it's too many as far as I'm concerned. All right, next up, we're going to the ACC. And believe it or not, Shaun, this is a big game as far as the ACC championship and playoff picture goes. Pat Narduzzi told us last week he didn't care if he got whipped by Notre Dame. Guess what? You got your wish. You got whipped by Notre Dame. Wasn't as close as the score. So, Pat Narduzzi, now you've got the conference game. You are at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, and I'm going to say it this way, Shaun, just a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I still go back. I'm glad you brought up Narduzzi's comments from last week. I think when you say that, it still sets the tone for the rest of the season. There should never be a game where you don't care if you get blown out. And like you said, they showed up and they got blown out, and the score was closer than what the reality was in that game. So Pitt now is saying, hey, we're going to be ready for this ACC battle. I think Georgia Tech has been the better team all season long. I think Georgia Tech is really, really hungry for a playoff spot here too. I wish they were 10-0 going into this game. They had that bad loss, but they've got Pitt and then they've got Georgia. If they win this game, I believe they're automatically getting into the ACC championship game.
I believe so.
That's huge for them. And I think they know that the writing's on the wall there for this to be a truly big time historic year for Georgia Tech when nobody would have saw this coming. So I like the Yellow Jackets to, pick up a win at home, put a beat down on Pitt and move on to the next week.
Shaun, we often talk about the spreads that seem out of line. And the common refrain is, it's telling us something. Mm-hmm. Do the people who set those spreads know more than we do? And I actually wondered about that with the Oregon spread. That's 10.5 seemed like too much. The Penn State spread seemed like too much. This one, 2.5 points doesn't seem nearly enough, and Georgia Tech's the home team. They're saying this would be like a pick'em mm-hmm. game on a neutral field. I don't think so. I think Georgia Tech is just playing the better team. So, like I said, there's that, boy, is this spread telling us something? I'm sorry. I can't. When that comes up, Shaun, I usually go the way my instincts tell me. If I go into a game and I picture what the spread is prior to looking at it, and I would have expected Georgia Tech to be maybe a touchdown favorite, 7-8 points, I'm going to go with Georgia Tech with this one, with the 2.5-point spread. I'm probably, I believe they'll confidently cover that and maybe even cover it by a lot. All right. Here's an interesting game for you, Shaun. We're going to the Big 12. BYU at Cincinnati. BYU with one loss. This has ramifications. Again, probably the Big 12, probably going to have just one team make the playoffs. unless someone upsets Texas Tech, then we'll have that discussion about Texas Tech making it even with a second loss in the conference championship game. But BYU playing a dangerous Cincinnati team on the road. BYU, a 2.5-point favorite in this one.
Dangerous Cincinnati team sums this up perfectly, because this is another game where, hey, there's no reason BYU should lose this game. They've been great all season. They're ranked 11th in the country. They're going against an unranked opponent. But Cincinnati is dangerous, especially at home. Initially, I really did want to go Cincinnati in this one. Pull off an upset. You're at home. You know, the Big 12 is always just a revolving door on who's on top. But I do think BYU's defense is going to be good enough to slow down Cincinnati's offense enough to where they can get a cover on the road. They've had a ton of success this season. I think they're destined for a Big 12 championship appearance against Texas Tech. I don't think they're better than Texas Tech, but I think they're, you know, they want another shot at Texas Tech to make up for that loss and get to the playoffs. So as much as I want to go with Cincinnati here, I've got to go with BYU on the road. They've had a really special season, and I think that continues this week.
You know, I've been on the BYU bandwagon most of the season saying, okay, maybe it's just a magical year for them. Everything falls correctly. I also believe in Big 12 chaos, okay? Mm-hmm. I really do. And I think this is where the chaos happens. I'm going with Cincinnati at home just because that's Big 12 chaos. It's what I expect from them. We're going with the Bearcats in Cincinnati. All right, Shaun, that is it for our picks this week. Fingers crossed as usual, Shaun.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Shaun. Make sure you join us again next week on Shauns Take.
Keystone Sports Network.